He promised to restore the glory of France, to revive the dream of his uncle, Napoleon the Great. And for a time he did. Paris sparkled, the boulevards glowed with gaslight, the empire glittered with gold, perfume, and illusion. But behind the marble façades and imperial parades, something was rotting. Napoleon III, the emperor of style, the master of spectacle, was a man devoured by his own creation, a body swollen by luxury, a mind collapsing under guilt and morphine. By the end, he could barely walk. His doctors drained pus from his bladder. His empire collapsed like his lungs, slowly, painfully, and without dignity. This is the story of the emperor who ate himself to death, and how France's brightest dream ended in infection, exile, and shame. He promised to restore the glory of France, to rebuild what Waterloo had destroyed. And when he entered Paris in 1852, the crowds cheered as if history itself had returned. He rode through the Arc de Triomphe, bathed in sunlight and applause, a living echo of Napoleon the Great, but softer, more polished, a man of charm, wit, and dangerous ambition. France was weary of revolutions. It wanted peace, prosperity, and spectacle. And Napoleon III gave them all. The boulevards widened, the palaces rose, the lights of Paris glowed brighter than ever before. He called it progress. He called it the new empire. But the marble was thin, and beneath it, the same cracks that had swallowed every dynasty before him. The empire glittered. Paris had never looked so beautiful. Under Napoleon III, the city became a stage, a theater of mirrors and marble, built to convince the world that France was eternal. Baron Haussmann carved wide boulevards through old neighborhoods, filling them with gaslight, carriages, and luxury. At night, music drifted from palaces, and chandeliers burned brighter than the stars. The Emperor and Empress Eugénie hosted endless balls where silk, perfume, and gossip mixed like incense. Painters adored her, courtiers worshipped her, and Napoleon smiled, pretending that splendor meant stability. But behind the velvet and gold, debt climbed like ivy up palace walls. Factories struck, peasants starved. The empire was rotting beneath the perfume, and the man who had promised France glory was already beginning to fall apart, inside and out. He ruled from the Tuileries, but his true kingdom was the table. Feasts became rituals, oysters by the dozen, pheasants, truffles, champagne, and mountains of sugar sculpted into palaces. At first it was charm, then habit, then sickness. The emperor's appetite grew monstrous. He ate through pain, through meetings, through nights when sleep refused him. His waistline swelled, his heart strained. His doctors begged restraint. He only smiled and poured another glass of Bordeaux. They called it gout. They whispered dropsy. But no diagnosis could name the truth. Napoleon III was devouring himself. He filled the silence with food and the emptiness with morphine. By the 1860s, the modern Caesar could barely walk without collapsing. And yet, every morning the newspapers still called him Majesty. By the late 1860s, France was still shining, but the man who ruled it was dying. Napoleon III's body had become a map of his empire, swollen, aching, poisoned from within. His bladder filled with stones, his legs puffed like pillars of wax, each step a victory, each breath a battle. He hid the pain beneath metals and silk. At parades he smiled through agony, his eyes dull with morphine. He still played the emperor, but the mask was slipping. In the council chamber he drifted off mid-sentence, his mind fogged by drugs and infection. Ministers watched in silence, pretending not to notice that France was being ruled by a ghost. And as his body collapsed, so did the empire. When war came in 1870, the modern Caesar could barely stand to read the reports. Sedan was not a battle, it was an autopsy. The empire bled out beside its master. And when they carried Napoleon III from the field, Half-conscious, trembling, France had already buried him in spirit. Exile, England, reign against the window of a rented villa in Chislehurst. The man who once ruled half of Europe now sat alone, wrapped in blankets, drinking morphine from a silver spoon. His empire was gone. Paris had forgotten him. Even Eugénie prayed from another room, afraid to watch her husband die. Doctors whispered of infection, of the bladder that refused to heal, of pus and poison and years of indulgence turned inward. Each operation failed. Each night stretched longer than the last. He asked for champagne and choked on it. By January 1873, the pain had swallowed his voice. When death came, it was merciful, a release from the body he had ruined. But when they opened him, truth spilled out. His bladder, a nest of stones, his liver, drowned in fat, his heart, scarred and shrunken. The Emperor of Style had eaten himself to death, not in one meal, but in a lifetime of excess. His body died in England, but his decay began in Paris. And in the silence that followed, the empire he built vanished like breath on glass. His monuments still stand, the boulevards, the bridges, the glittering ghost of Paris he built to hide his decay. But beneath the marble and gaslight lies a warning that vanity can build empires, but never sustain them. Napoleon III mistook indulgence for destiny and spectacle for strength. He dreamed of greatness, but died in exile, swollen, drugged, and forgotten. Because power without restraint always rots from within. And the man who tried to resurrect an empire ended up destroying his own body instead. He wanted to live like a god. He died like a man. If you value stories like this, stories of power, ruin, and forgotten empires, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. Because history remembers not only how we rise, but how we fall.